it's very curious to notice how the Pope wears a mitre on his head that, when seen from the side, has a shape identical to that of a fish's head. I'm talking about an iconography that, according to the Vatican, is merely symbolic. Is the Pope, consciously or not, carrying the symbolic representation of Oannes, that Babylonian fishman, under the guise of orthodoxy? Right beneath the marble and Byzantine mosaics that make up the majestic golden Basilica of St. Mark, located in Venice, there is something very macabre that doesn't appear in any tourist brochure. I'm talking about an underground chamber sealed for centuries, closed off with stone slabs covered by layers upon layers of ceremonial mortar. A foundation that doesn't seem to have been built to support the temple, but rather to contain, to hide something that exists there. The official story tells us that the basement of the basilica houses crypts and remains of earlier constructions from the 9th century. However, the unofficial story, and you know very well that I like the hidden side of the unofficial story says that a wet manuscript was found there, rolled up inside a lead cylinder, hidden behind a side altar during hydraulic renovations in the 2000s. This document became known among a few initiates as the Fishman Manuscript, a piece that was never shown to the public. But what are you talking about? What do you mean, Fishman? What type of story is this? This story was described by an anonymous restorer who leaked their testimony before disappearing from the map. The manuscript was made of a kind of aquatic leather that had scales, and it was still flexible even after so many centuries, right? And it had handwriting that didn't match any known alphabet. But it's not the language that's frightening in this text, it's the content of the text. Because the text was partially deciphered by independent cryptologists, and it talks about hybrid beings, half human, half fish, who came and lived among humans before the flood and brought knowledge to ancient civilizations. I'm not just talking about myths, the ones mentioned by name, like Oannes, Dagon, or Enki. I'm talking about things described in antiquity as human figures, with a human body and a fish head. Aquatic beings who emerged from the waters to teach people agriculture, writing, and astronomy. But not just Anis, not just Enki, because we also had the Apkalus, who were the famous divine sages, the antediluvian sages, who brought wisdom to the world. All these beings I'm mentioning to you had a fish-like appearance, right? So a human body and a fish head. And the 7 Apkalus, they are semi-divine figures from Mesopotamian mythology. They are described there as wise beings sent by the gods to teach humanity after creation. They are depicted as having human bodies, but with fish heads, wearing fish cloaks, and these beings emerged from the sacred waters of Abzu, symbolizing primordial wisdom. Tradition says that these beings brought knowledge about art, writing, agriculture, and sacred rituals. And they are closely connected to the god Enki, who was the lord of the waters and of wisdom. In some interpretations, the Apkallu would be the true founders of Sumerian civilization, and their teachings echoed there in ancient texts, with them being the bearers of ancestral light. Now, we know that the figure of the Pope represents a successor of Peter, and it's very curious to notice how the Pope wears a mitre on his head that, when seen from the side, has an identical shape to that of a fish's head. I'm talking about an iconography that, according to the Vatican, is merely symbolic. But that's where I ask you, what if it's not just symbolic? And what if this is the legacy of something much older? Like something that survived in rituals camouflaged by Catholic liturgy. So, would the Pope, consciously or not, be carrying the symbolic representation of Oanius, that Babylonian fishman, under the guise of orthodoxy? Well, the manuscript found there at the Basilica of St. Mark contains, they say, drawings, not just inscriptions. And detailed images of these drawings show sea creatures, human-like features, and fixed black eyes. In some engravings, these beings hand over cylindrical objects, similar to tubes or sealed scrolls, to kneeling men, as if they were there transferring some kind of technology, a map or some instructions, or as if these men were part of some secret cult. In other images, they appear sinking temples in great floods, as if they wanted to erase traces of their own existence. But what is most impressive about this document found there in the Basilica of St. Mark is the description of a place called the Veiled Center, a structure sealed by 7 gates, beneath a city built on water that has commerce. For some scholars, this is a veiled description of Venice itself. And the Basilica of St. Mark in this context would be much more than just a Christian temple. It would be a seal, a symbolic marker to hide what is underneath. Now, if all of this is really true and not just coincidence or creative mysticism, why would the Church keep this manuscript a secret? Why are they keeping this secret, maintaining absolute silence about this story? And why wasn't any formal investigation opened after the discovery of that hidden compartment in St. Mark's Church? Some believe that the Vatican has known about the existence of the document for centuries and was just waiting for the right moment to recover it. Others say that the manuscript was secretly removed by direct order of the Holy See, transported in sealed boxes by waterways to a monastery outside Italy, where it is currently hidden among hermetically sealed volumes of the Index Librorum Prohibitorum. But no one can prove it. Even the restorers themselves, who worked in the basement of St. Mark's Basilica in 2003, were all replaced and sworn to absolute silence. When approached, they don't talk about the subject. Now, the question that won't go away is, why was this part of human history buried? What is so forbidden and so dangerous about the idea that hybrid beings inhabited the ancient world? That they were the ones responsible for teaching the first codes of civilization, and that they disappeared beneath the waters by their own will? Why can't we know what's so dangerous about that? What were the sages of the abyss teaching us that we can't know? And why was all that memory turned into a myth? And even more, recently a video went viral here on my channel telling the story of Cantinflas, the Mexican comedian who kept a creature from another dimension imprisoned, a kind of aquatic being similar to a mermaid, similar to those pre-Diluvian sages, in his beach house in Acapulco, and he was even investigated by the police because of it. This week here on the channel, I also told you other stories about Cantinflas involving sea creatures, creatures from other dimensions, and I also talked about the case of the fishman of Acapulco. So for me, all these beings are exactly the same thing, and all the stories kind of connect in a really bizarre way. And even worse, for me, these beings could actually exist. And the proof that these beings exist is everywhere. They're in the Vatican, in Venice, in Mexico, in ancient manuscripts, in the mythology of the Sumerian people. But after all, who are these beings, or what are these beings? Do they really exist? Or are they just a mysterious symbol that carries an ancient power? Well, I'll leave those questions for you to decide down below in the comments. What do you think these beings are? And most importantly, don't you find it strange that the Pope wears something so symbolic on his head, a mitre, which looks exactly like the ones worn by the pre-flood sages? Could it be that this is actually a secret cult to these beings who brought us so much ancient wisdom? Could it be that the Vatican still worships these beings in a disguised way? Well, as I said, I'll leave it up to you to decide all of this down below in the comments. Comment down below what you think about all these stories. And it's curious, right? How here on the channel lately we've had stories about fishmen, fishwomen, about the involvement of Earth's secret societies with these creatures and about the appearance of these creatures in ancient mythologies. I tell you that nothing, absolutely nothing, is a coincidence, and that the sect is preparing you for a dark revelation through my videos. Well, I'll stop here with this video, and I want to know everything you think about these stories down below in the comments. And if you watch this video until the end, don't forget to comment today's magic word, which is merman, down below in the comments. A big kiss to you all, and I'll see you, of course, if the sect allows, in our next videos. Bye.